Welcome to another video. This should be very helpful to all the new players out there looking to get into Guild Wars 2 PvP. I get asked these questions all the time on stream. What classes are good in PvP? Which ones are good to learn PvP on? Or which ones are the easiest for new players? In today's video, we're going to be addressing all of those questions. I'll rank every single spec in all the core classes on a tier list from what is the easiest to play mechanically to what is the most difficult. Now, if you want to see a tier list for how effective the specs are in ranked, go check out one of my more recent videos where I make a tier list in the current ranked meta. This tier list is purely based off of how challenging or easy these specs are to play. And make sure you listen to my explanations because certain builds for different classes may move up or down the placements, but roughly speaking, I'll try to place everything where I think they should go. Now, out of the 9 classes, Guardian, Warrior, Ranger, and Necromancer tend to be the most simple to play. They're the most straightforward. They have easy mechanics. With that being said, the other 5 classes are not particularly difficult, but their mechanics may take longer to get used to if you are new to the game. So, starting off the list with Core Guardian. This is a ping-friendly build if you're playing support Core Guardian in PvP. Even if you're playing a DPS Core Guardian, I would put it in easy. It's got a lot of instant cast effects. There aren't many builds that counter a Core Guardian. They would need unblockables and boon rips, so Thieves and Necros tend to do well into Core Guardians, but overall it is a very mechanically simple spec to play. Now, Dragon Hunter is also fairly easy, but it is squishy. So I wouldn't put it in ping-friendly, as you'll probably die a lot on it with the low health pool you get from Berserker Amulet. However, the mechanics of Dragon Hunter are very simple. Now, Firebrand, I'm going to put this one in hard. You've got way more buttons from the tome skills. So mechanically, it is just more difficult to play. Now, Willbender, I would put this one in medium. It's got a good mix of skills, not particularly demanding mechanically. However, knowing how to maximize the value of your virtues is where the difficulty comes in for Willbender. Now, Core Warrior, I would say this one's easy to play as well. I'm hesitating to put it in ping friendly, even though Core Warrior is fairly forgiving to play. You can do well on this if you're high ping, but I'm going to put this one in easy. I would highly recommend playing Core Warrior in PvP if you are trying to learn the mechanics on how the combat works, because playing Core Warrior will give you very good fundamentals from learning how to use your mobility, learning how to use crowd controls into burst skills, healing, all of that stuff. Core Warrior's got, and if you can figure out how to make Core Warrior work, it'll make it easier for you to play a lot of other classes. Now, Berserker, I'm going to put this one in medium. It's not particularly difficult, but it's not the most simple either. Just managing your Berserk mode and knowing how to get enough adrenaline to enter it, and then just using your primal burst skills and generating enough adrenaline to keep casting them over and over. It's not hard, not overly simple though, so I'm going to leave that one in medium. Now, Spellbreaker in PvP. This one is also, I would say, medium to hard. Honestly, it could be easy too. I mean, so Spellbreaker is one of the few classes or specs in the game that you can actually play on a rotation. So the thing with Spellbreaker is that it's got a lot of very low cooldown but high impact skills. So even if you're not timing your skills very well, as long as you're just using one thing after another, you can often overwhelm your opponents just by the very nature of the fact that almost all of your skills are important in some way, and they're fairly low cooldown, so you'll almost always have them up. So if you're just running through your rotations, I would say it's on the easier side of medium. But overall, when you are looking to play this spec at a higher level, then Spellbreaker, even though it wins into almost everything 1v1, they are skill-based matchups. So at that point, that's when it would be more difficult. Now, as for Bladesworn, I would say this spec is probably on the harder side of medium. It's not overly simple to play, but it doesn't have a lot of the mechanics that other warrior specs have because you don't have weapon swap on this. Instead, you have gun saber. So managing your gun saber and dragon triggers is where the difficulty comes in for Bladesworn. Now, Core Revenant, I'm gonna put this one on the easier side of medium. It's not overly difficult to play, but you have to manage your energy and your legend swaps in order to play Revenant. And if you don't do it well and you're burning through your energy really quickly, you're going to find yourself unable to cast skills in PvP. So that's why I would put Revenant in medium. Now, Herald is also very similar difficulty-wise to Core Rev, so I'm going to put this in medium right next to it for the very same reasons that Core Rev is also in medium. Renegade. fairly easy to play. I would say it's on the easier side of medium. Again, a lot of Revenants, just managing your energy and legend swap cooldowns. With that being said, Vindicator, I would put this one in hard because your alliance stance has both blue and red swaps. So you're technically managing 3 stances instead of 2. So I would say Vindicator is more difficult to play, but it is also more forgiving than the other Revenant specs at PvP. So when you get the hang of it, you'll find it very easy to survive. Now, Core Ranger. This is an easy class to play. If you are playing Axe, Dagger, Greatsword, running a Valk Ranger builds with Smoke Scale and Drake, it is a very straightforward side noder to play. It's also fairly forgiving as well. Longbow, Greatsword, Core Ranger takes a bit more skill, so maybe I'll put that on the harder side of easy, but mechanically it is not overly challenging. You just have to know how to maximize your value on it. As for Druid would go in the easier side of medium. You just have to learn how to use your Celestial Avatar mechanic. It's not overly difficult, but there is a fairly high skill ceiling on it once you get better at the spec. Now, Soul Beast is on the harder side of medium. Learning how to manage your merge skills and knowing when to swap in and out of beast mode are all aspects that make Soul Beast more challenging to play. With that being said, the actual builds for Soul Beast are not mechanically demanding. So when you get the hang of your swaps and you learn how to merge with your pet and unmerge, and you know the correct timings for that, Soul Beast is fairly easy to play. Now, as for Untamed, this is the hardest spec to play in PvP. You can do very well on it if you get good at it, but it's going to take a long time to learn the combos, and it's also difficult to survive on it. So Untamed, definitely the hardest spec to play. Core Thief. Core Thief is, I would say it's in the middle of medium. Learning how to manage your initiative is the main aspect that makes Thief potentially more difficult than some of the other classes on this list. With that being said, if you're playing Shadow Arts, the stealth makes the survivability of Thief in general much easier. So I would say Thief, solidly in the middle of medium. As for Daredevil, it's about the same. I would say it's probably more difficult than Core Thief because you have to learn how to manage 3 dodges instead of 2. It is more forgiving, but you just have more resources to keep track of. Now, as for Deadeye, I would say this spec is hard to play. You have to manage both initiative and malice on this spec, so you just have more to keep track of than other Thief specs. A Spectre, I would say, is also in the middle of medium. It's not overly difficult, but you have to generate Shroud and you have to know how to use it well. So you just have more buttons. I would say it is definitely more difficult than Daredevil though. So we'll put it around here. Now, Core Engineer. This spec is on the harder end of medium to like the easier end of hard. Core Entry is not very good right now. I would definitely stay away from it. However, it's also got a lot of buttons, so it's not an easy spec to play. So stay away from this, but I'm gonna leave that one in hard. Now, as for Scrapper is on the easier end of medium right now. Nade spam is fairly easy. You can throw them in any direction. Best mid-range weapon set in the game. Scrapper, not very mechanically difficult. I would actually say, depending on the build you run, it is also ping friendly because you don't really need to rely on precise timing when a lot of your damage comes from spam. Now, if you're playing Scrapper at like a high level, I would say it would go in the low end of easy, high end of medium, but overall, Scrapper is a ping friendly spec. Hollowsmith is, I would put this one in the middle of medium. Hollowsmith, you just have to manage your heat and make sure you don't overheat in PvP. That's the main thing. So you want to be able to like use your Photon Forge, get value out of it, but not kill yourself in the process. So Hollowsmith, definitely in the middle of medium. I would say this is also a ping friendly spec though. So difficulty wise, I would say probably around here just because you want to make sure you don't overheat, but you can also play this spec if you have high ping. So I'll leave it up there for now. Now, Mechanist, incredibly easy to play. I would also put that one in ping friendly. The mech does most of the work for you, and you can sit back and shoot or rifle auto attacks. The spec falls off the higher you go in PvP, but at the low ratings, you can deal a ton of damage on it. So I would definitely put Mechanist in ping friendly. Now, as for Core Mesmer, Burst Power Mesmer is on the easier side of medium, but if you're playing a side node tanky build with staff, then I would say it definitely goes in easy or ping friendly. You are fairly tanky, it's hard to kill. So depending on the build you run, I would say either ping friendly or medium. As for Chronomancer, it is the second hardest spec to play in the game, behind Untamed. Untamed is the hardest, followed by Power Chrono. Now, if you're playing well Chrono, that is significantly easier to play. I would say that is on the easier end of medium if you're playing well chrono, but if you're playing power chrono, that's the second hardest spec to play in PvP. As for Mirage, Mirage is difficult to play in PvP. You only have one dodge, you're fairly squishy, and you don't deal that much damage right now. So overall, you're going to probably struggle more on Mirage if you are brand new. Now, Virtuoso, on the easier side of medium, I wouldn't say the spec is easy, but it is extremely forgiving to play once you learn it. It's almost impossible to kill if you're playing defensively, and there's no spec that really counters Virtuoso right now. So depending on how well you know how to play it, it would probably go up to the harder end of easy. But overall, if you're just getting into PvP, then Virtuoso is, I would say, on the easier end of medium. Now, Core Ellie, I'd say it's on the harder end of medium or the easier end of hard. Core Ellie has 4 attunements, so you're managing 20 weapon skills instead of most classes at 10. So Ellie just has more buttons to press, and that's why I would put it here. And Tempest is on the easier side of medium. It's weird because Tempest technically has more buttons than Core Ellie. At the same time, it is more forgiving to play with the overloads and the fact that you are generally playing as a support with Stoneheart when you play Tempest. So it's not as easy as support guard, but it is more effective when you get good at it. Now Weaver, I definitely say Weaver is difficult to play if you are new to the game or the game mode. Weaver, you need to learn how your attunements mix and match, because you can attune to 2 elements at once instead of just 1. So with that being said, while Weaver takes longer to get used to if you're new, it is extremely forgiving to play once you get good at it. You can counter build a lot of specs on the enemy team and do quite well on Weaver. Now, Catalyst. So the interesting thing about Catalyst is that it's actually a rotation based spec in PvP. There's not many of them. If you're playing Hammer, you go from earth to air to fire and water. I have a guide on that on my YouTube channel if you want to learn how to play Hammer Catalyst, so make sure you go check that out, and a bunch of the other spec guides if you're interested in those as well. But I would say Catalyst is hard to play because you have to manage your energy levels and your Jade Spheres. With that being said, when you learn how to manage your energy and Jade Spheres, Hammer Catalyst and Catalyst in general is very forgiving to play. It does quite well in the meta at the moment. It's difficult to kill and you have high impact. But mechanically, just managing your energy and knowing how to generate it in combat enough for you to rotate through your spheres is where the difficulty of Catalyst comes into play. Now, Core Necro, also fairly easy. I would say Fearmancer is in the middle of easy. I would say this is also a ping-friendly spec though, so if you have high ping, you can play a Core Necro to good effect, especially if you're going Minion Mancer, because you can just have AI do most of the work for you. So depending on the spec you play, you can either go in ping-friendly or the middle of easy. Now, as for Reaper, Reaper is also easy to play. All Necro specs are either easy or ping friendly. Reaper, if you're going like Power Reaper, I would say it's honestly ping friendly. You don't need low ping on this spec to do well. Scourge, also ping friendly. This spec can spam a lot of AoEs. It's generally pretty effective as long as you're pressing your buttons. But overall, it's not the strongest in the meta, but at the lower ratings, if you're brand new to the game, you can do quite well on a Scourge. And Harbinger. So Harbinger is also fairly easy to play. I would hesitate to put Harbinger in ping friendly, even though I don't think you need low ping to play it. I would say it's solidly easy though. The mechanics are fairly straightforward. You just deal a lot of damage at Shroud, corrupt people's boons, not overly difficult to play. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope that helps all the new players out as well. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.